Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii Muhammad. Thank you so much for tuning in and being a part of the conversation. Folks, we got a lot to talk about. First and foremost, we're going to give you the latest around the killing of Nipsey Hussle, the LA rapper who was slain in front of his store in South LA. We'll share with you the latest about that and where that puts the state of hip hop. Also, we're going to talk about what's happening with R. Kelly. We'll bring you the latest around that. And of course, I want to have a conversation about the politics of distrust, how now we're seeing black voters against black candidates in political spaces. We'll have that conversation. So we got a lot to get to. Of course, your comments will be encouraged and so much more. So stay with us. It's all happening on today's edition of The Culture right here on the Black Star Network. Let's go. Folks, welcome to the show. Welcome to The Culture here on the Black Star Network. Happy Thursday, folks. We got a lot to talk about, so let's jump right in it. First conversation, I wanted to bring you up to speed on what's been happening with this case. This is the case of our brother and LA rapper, influencer Nipsey Hussle, who was shot and gunned down in front of his store back in March of 2019. Now, his killer has officially gone back to court to be sentenced, and it is official that a jury has determined that Eric Ronald Holder Jr., who shot Nipsey Hussle outside of his store, the Marathon store in South LA, has now been convicted of and sentenced to 60 years in prison during 60 years to life in prison. And so this is the end of a long process, a legal process, but more importantly, this has been in the end in terms of bringing some level of closure to a case that has rocked the whole country and of course the hip-hop industry and the hip-hop community. Now, here's the latest around how Holder's sentence is going to be broken up. Take a look at this. This is coming from CNN. Take a look at this. Holder was sentenced to up to 25 years for shooting Nipsey and an extra 25 years for firearm enhancements added to the charge. He was also convicted of 2 counts of attempted voluntary manslaughter for injuring 2 other men in the incident, for which he was sentenced to an additional 10 years. Yeah. Very tragic case. Here's the situation around this case. One is that there were a number of cameras, CCTVs, and other cameras that were on the property or near the property. And this is how they determined that Eric Holder was the one responsible. But shortly before the shooting took place, there was a verbal altercation between Nipsey and Eric. They had a relationship. So this wasn't, quote unquote, a random shooting. They had a relationship. And the word was, according to the reports, that Nipsey had essentially called Eric Holder a snitch or a snitch. And it enraged Eric Holder to the point where he left Marathon store and in a matter of moments was able to come back. And while Nipsey was standing outside and shot the LA rapper 10 to 11 times. Then after shooting him, he went over to the body and kicked Nipsey's head with his feet. And this was all caught on camera. And he was able to get out of to flee the scene after that. All of it was caught on camera. Now, Eric Holder's dad had decided to address the court in a letter that he has written from himself. He talked about the grief that he wanted to that he was experiencing around this situation, but more importantly, he also talked about why he wanted to apologize on the behalf of his son. Take a look at this. This is just a part of the letter that Eric Holder's dad had read to the court. He said, quote, "I know there are not enough words or apologies that will fill the void, the loss, the pain, the deep sorrow the family of Ermias Ashkodum Nipsey Hussle is experiencing. You cannot imagine the agony. the grief, the utter disbelief and devastation I feel knowing my son Eric Jr. took another person's life. Now, this was said in the letter, which was read aloud for the record. Now, Holder's father also detailed the circumstances of his son's childhood, spoke about his mental health, and noted that his son's mother died about 2 months before Hussle's fatal shooting. So, and that is, of course, a picture of our brother, the late, great Nipsey Hussle, one of LA owns. He was born here in South Los Angeles. He was 33 years old, and he was a father of two, and he was considered to be one of the most successful hip-hop entrepreneurs in the game. He collaborated with dozens of artists, including Kendrick Lamar, Drake, YG, Ty Dolla $ign, Meek Mill, Young Thug, and he's also has been in collaboration with the likes of Jay-Z posthumously. So Nipsey has and continues to hold a special place in the heart of the hip hop industry, the hip hop community. And, you know, I didn't know, and I'm going to just share my little personal, when we got here in LA, literally, folks, if you drive through LA, especially through South LA, you will see nothing but murals of Nipsey. There are two people that LA loves, and that's Nipsey Hussle and Kobe Bryant. Murals of them everywhere from downtown to South LA. They have this big, beautiful, right there at the Crenshaw Mall. There's this big, beautiful picture of Nipsey that is lit up. Beautiful, beautiful picture. It's like it's something from his album cover. But it was a big, beautiful, right there on the side of the mall. And you were talking about almost 4 years later, folks, since that shooting took place. And that picture of Nipsey is still there, right at the Crenshaw Baldwin Hills Mall. But this is, I mean, I don't know if this brings closure, but it certainly does. It certainly does kind of make us think twice about the violence that's often talked about in hip hop. There have been a number of hip hop artists that have lost their lives, especially here in Los Angeles, as a result of just violent circumstances. And so it's very, very painful, especially when, you know, if you're driving down Slauson and Crenshaw, this is where Nipsey's story is. Before, you know, probably about a year and a half ago, it was some level of activity. Now there's nothing but fences, boards. It's boarded up. I know that there was talk about not just taking his Marathon store to the online space, but then there was also some talk about maybe possibly turning that space that he had the Marathon store right there on Slauson, turning it into some sort of memorial or museum or something to show some level of love and dedication. So there has been, it is a void that can be felt here in Los Angeles. Let me go to you, my culture crew, to get your take on this latest situation as we are seeing the sentencing of Eric Holder Jr., the killer of Nipsey Hussle, finally being brought to justice. 60 years to life in prison. He's not coming home, folks. Iowa PLA movement, you say eye for an eye and tooth for a tooth. He deserves it. Yeah. He got so upset with the brother for calling him out. And again, we don't know. Of course, I'm not privy to that, but they had that beef and he took it to that place. And it's unfortunate. Very, very unfortunate. Chris Big, you said, I've been playing his music all day, enjoying knowing his killer got 60 years. Yeah. His last album probably was his greatest album. I don't know. Like I listened to some of his earlier stuff, but this last one is definitely something that is for the record book. So, you know, I feel you. Chris, I definitely feel you on that. Pauline, you checked in, and Chris and Iowa, thank you so much for checking in. Pauline, you said, as far as I'm concerned, he could have gotten a death penalty. Wow. And I want to get your take on this, crew. what do you make of his father making the point? Now, his father saying, look, we're in utter disbelief. We understand the pain, the grief, the agony. We apologize. But what do you think of his father bringing up the point that he had suffered some mental health issues and that he could have possibly still been in grief from his mother passing 2 months earlier? Does that play into the conversation, or rather, how does that play into the conversation? Because we know that when traditionally, and we have seen this, when young white males lash out violently, right, that often comes up into the conversation. Mental health, what was going on in their life before that moment, and all of those things. When black males do it, we don't get that far into the conversation, unfortunately. We're starting to, but it's still somewhat of a taboo thing to talk about mental health and wellness, what was going on in the life of a perpetrator, especially a young black male. So how does that play into that? I'm interested in hearing what y'all have to say about that, Pauline. But great point. I definitely understand it. Like I said, you still feel the void in your heart. And I'm not from LA, but you know, my heart, every time I'm driving in the area, every time you feel it, you just feel it. And you always wonder, like, why did he have to be the one? You know what I mean? Like, this brother was, and I'm speaking of Nipsey. Nipsey was such a major figure. He transformed he's turned his life into a different place. He became a business owner, and I mean, he was just such an influential figure. And for him to be gunned down the way he did is absolutely just tragic. Janae, you said, I am so over family who want to cry out after their child/adult commit crimes. How about teach your child or adult to not commit them? Rest in peace, Nipsey. This was uncalled for. Yeah, I mean, you know, that's the point. Yeah. And you know, I often hear when people talk about that, like when do we take accountability, you know, or teach our children, especially our young black boys, to handle themselves differently? And I think it's just about, you know, to your point, Janae, I think it's just simply about, you know, just being intentional about how we go about things, teaching our black boys that violence is not the answer, teaching our black boys the skills of conflict resolution, teaching our black boys about the value of kind of talking out your problems with an individual, giving them those skills instead of just teaching them, like, if somebody disrespects you, just pop them in the mouth. Because nowadays, that popping them in the mouth 10 years ago is now can be seen as, if somebody disrespects you, just take a gun to them. So it's a whole different culture. Look, we got to take a quick pause. When we come back, I'm going to take a couple of more of your comments as we talk about the latest in the killing of Nipsey Hussle. So stay with us. It's The Culture here on the Black Star Network.
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds.
As an angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol,
we're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear.
Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no!
punch.
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
Folks, welcome back to the show. We've been talking and kind of gave you an update on the case of the killing of LA rapper, influencer, businessman Nipsey Hussle. And we have just reported that his killer, Eric Holder Jr., was convicted and, of course, sentenced yesterday to 60 years to life in prison for the killing of the LA rapper. And this killing has still hard to totally accept. And you don't even have to be from LA to understand it. But if you are from LA, if you live in LA, if you're in the area of LA, you know that this thing is still feels very fresh. And so, you know, my heart and prayers go out to Nipsey's family, to our sister Lauren London, to his children, and just to the whole family, man, because this one was a really, really hard hit. You know, sometimes you hear about certain celebrities, you're like, man, it's unfortunate this person hit you, but you don't connect with them as much. But this one, I connected with this one all the way across the country before I even got to LA. And so, you know, it's really, really something to kind of see and still feel the spirit of this brother. I wanted to get your take on his crew about the fact that his father brought up in the letter that was read out loud to the court that his son, Eric Holder Jr., was, had some mental health issues and may have kind of insinuated, he didn't say it, he just kind of insinuated that Eric Holder Jr.'s mom had just died 2 months before the shooting. And so I just want to get your take on it. See what y'all think about that situation. Let me go back to you. Tiana, you checked in and said mental health is not an excuse. He could just stayed in the house and Nipsey would be alive, right? Right. I mean, I don't know. And here's the thing about that, Tiana. Like, I don't know if his father was trying to, his father, obviously, he apologized for what his son had done. But I don't know if he was trying to, like, not justify it, but just trying to take some of the sting out of it to make it seem like, you know, he wasn't, quote unquote, in his right frame of mind when he did this, which, I've heard before, you know, we often hear that in these type of cases, but it still doesn't take away the fact that someone was killed, someone who was beloved, someone who really made an impact in people's lives. They were taken. So I'm not sure how to really process that, but a great point, Tiana. Dejima Boutique, you said losing a parent or parents or loved one is never excuse. I lost my mother young and immersed myself into other things to cope. And yesterday, and I'm glad you brought up Dejima. Yesterday, when we had that conversation with the sister, with the life coach, our sister Ayana McNeil, talking about trauma, talking about coping. Y'all remember that, right? When we talked about those things, it's like you have to be very self-aware to know where you are when you're experiencing grief. You have to be so self-aware to say, okay, I am feeling depressed, or I am feeling this, or I am feeling that, right? Like there has to be a level of self-awareness. Grief can cause darkness, but the light of self-awareness has to be present in order for you to even go forward and to your point, Dejima, to cope in a productive way, not in a destructive way, right? Because some people folks cope through smoking and drinking. Some folks cope through other things, right? You know, and really get into the dump. So I'm not sure again, this is a skill that we can teach boys, black boys and black girls, that when you go through traumatic events, say of the loss of a loved one, or say some type of change of life situation, right? That you do learn how to deal with that. And this is something that I you know, when I get an opportunity and stand in front of young people, that I try to emphasize that you got to learn how to deal with rejection. You like life is, because sometimes I think that, especially for this generation, they think that everything is supposed to kind of be laid out for them, or you know, that things are supposed to be open the door, or these things are supposed to be easy. But the one skill, and to the point of previous generations, right? So if you grew up in the 80s and the 90s like I did, you know, you didn't get a silver spoon in the mouth, right? You didn't always have everything that you needed. Your parents may have came, or you may have came from humble beginnings, right? If you grew up in the 60s or 70s or 40s and 50s, if you grew up in these times where our people experience great, you know, stress and strain, that, you know, whether it's economic stress and strain or social stress and strain, like when you grew up during those periods where things aren't always good, there's a certain level of resilience that is ingrained in the culture of that time period that permeates down to how the children deal with hard times. There's a certain way to deal with that, right? Like if you grew up in a hood without certain, you know, food, and you getting government assistance, like there's a resilience that comes along with that, right? But that's not always taught, and most certainly that's not always ingrained in an individual. Some people, when they grow up on the hard times, they go inward, they get angry, they want to rebel, they're trying to, you know, trying to figure out how to get out of that space, that mental and emotional space where they feeling just negative or dark. But there's a certain level of resilience. And so, you know, back to your point, Dejima, teaching young people how to cope when tragedy strikes, because we got to teach them that. Like, I think for us now, especially if you're a parent, we work so hard to try to isolate our children from all of these things in life. Like, we don't want them to struggle. But there's a beautiful thing that's in struggle. I think many of us can agree that in struggle, you gain. And in pain, you gain. In darkness, you gain. Right? Like, if you learn how to get through those hard times with the best attitude, the right spirit, if you learn how to get through those hard times, recognizing that this is just a temporary situation, not a permanent situation. If you learn how to get through hard times where you realize, like, this is not, like, you know, the old saying, like, nobody is doing this to you, it's being done for you. And I'm saying that in a divine sense, right? If you say to God, well, why, God, why do you? Because he's not doing it because he's trying to punish you, but he's trying to purify you to get you to a better place and for you to become a better human being. If we do those type of things, right, that level of skill sets, we teach the next generation that we wouldn't be raising up individuals who don't know how to handle rejection, don't know how to handle when somebody doesn't like them or something, you know what I mean? And that's what happened in this situation. And I'm not justifying what this dude did, but I'm just it just speaks volumes about where we see a lot of young black men who get into these violent situations because they don't know how to cope with whatever pain that may have been in them. They don't know how to deal with somebody going against them. Their egos get bruised a little too easy. Come on, y'all. Y'all got me in my bag today already. I'm just saying, I see this. And if you work with young people, if you work in the school system, if you work in any type of like juvenile space, and I've done this work for many years, like going into these places, worked in schools all across in different parts of the city of Baltimore and around the state. I've seen it. It's the same thing. That ability to learn how to deal with your emotions, right? And to not allow your emotions of anger and pain to consume you to the point where you become a tool, where you become an agent of pain. That's See, and that's where I think a lot of young black men are. That's why we do see the killings in the neighborhood the way we see them, right? Because we just haven't dealt with the pain. Some of us probably thought, oh, yesterday, I was talking about these brothers and stuff, but I know that underneath all of this crazy ass behavior that black men go through, and this will also apply to young black women, the craziness that we see young people go through is because there's some deep-seated anger and pain there, and they don't know how to handle it. So they lash out, they wild out, they get violent. I hope I'm making some sense, crew. I hope I'm making some sense, because that's why I wanted to bring this up. Definitely wanted to bring this up. So Dejima, you got me. I appreciate you for saying that. Cope. Jackie, this is something that I appreciate you saying. You said it's interesting how much everyone knows about a person's mental state after a crime is committed. Get them help. That is absolutely facts. It's like we have so many red flags. We often talk about red flags in the dating world, red flags in relationships and stuff. What about red flags when you see people that know, like we as a community is unfortunately part of our culture, where if somebody that we know is dealing with some stuff, like they showing signs of being homicidal or suicidal, we don't have those conversations with that person. We don't get involved or try to intervene, or at least try to guide them. I mean, of course, we may not all be equipped to handle that. So at least trying to guide them to a professional that can help them, right? We kind of like write it off, like, don't talk to so-and-so because he's crazy. And it's like, well, so-and-so still needs to be talked to, because we don't want so-and-so in the community and doing something wild, right? And guess what, folks? This is not old people. This is young people. So it requires us, to your point, Jackie, that we get people help when we see that they have something wrong. My man, Truth is Power, you said we grow up and we respect death. Taking a life is the last option in any situation, but it happens so easily nowadays that we lose people before they develop into who they're going to be. Come on, brother, absolutely. I love that. I love that. It is. It's easy to go and say I'm gonna kill somebody, and I know that might sound crazy for any one of us, because we're not in that space. Like we may have gotten, grew up in around those elements. But now we're more in a more empowered, enlightened space. But I'm saying for those of our people who are in the thick of that, right? In those subcultures, in every American city, every place that Black folks live and are present, there's a subculture of death. That's our subculture, is death. And when that subculture of death raises us, only a few of us can get out of it. You know what I'm saying? A few of us are able to make it, but I want y'all to reflect, and I want y'all to take this quick walk with me before we take our next pause. I want y'all to reflect on how many of those Black men or Black women didn't make it out of the subculture of death that's present in our community. I mean, we can name them like boom, boom, right off the back of our hand, right? But that's the subculture. And so to that point, Truth is Power, like that's why it's so easy to take somebody's life, because you grew up around it, you talk about it, it's so ever present in your family and your how you live and what you see, that it's nothing to say I'm gonna kill somebody, I'm gonna kill this brother, I'm gonna kill. You don't even say the brother, you say the N-word, but I'm gonna kill him, and you don't even think twice about it. And I'm not saying us, but those who are still wrapped up in that subculture, those who are still confined by that subculture, it's easy for death to be not the last option. Truth is Power. You know it too, bro. That ain't the last option. That's the first option. That's how serious that subculture of death is. So I'm glad you pointed that out, brother. Thank you so much. Jane, my sister, you said I don't believe I don't believe in coddling our kids. But resiliency is not automatic based on generational struggle. I look around and there are a lot of people that didn't make it from my generation. Facts. You know what I'm saying? Like, just think about it. Just think about how far, and each one of us, as we close out this part of the discussion, think about how far we have gone, right, to become enlightened, conscious individuals. If you tune into this show, you have some level of consciousness. There's some life in you. You know what I'm saying? If you tune into this network called Black Star Network, if you tune into the culture, if you're having conversations, and that means that there is some truth, there's some knowledge, somebody imparted you are exposed to some level of conscious thinking, some level of life affirming knowledge, right? That brought you here. And some of us might be, well, why aren't people? Because they haven't been exposed to life affirming knowledge. They haven't been exposed to consciousness. And when we talk about that path, like how do you get to a path of consciousness to see the value of your own life? How do you get to a place to see the value of another person's life who you have no interactions with, right? But you still see their value, their humanity, and you respect their life to the point that you make sure that with your interactions with them is peaceful. You make sure that your interactions with them is good. That you make sure your interactions with them is life affirming, right? So but there's a consciousness that comes behind or that undergirds all of that. There has to be a consciousness. And at this point, we are yearning. And this is the thing about this tragic situation with Brother Nipsey. We are yearning. This is another case where we have more work to do to break them generational curses, Janelle. But more important, we have more work to do to expose the next generation and others in our circles to conscious thinking. And I'm thinking of my brother Conscious Thought. I love the name, but we got so much work to do. So much work to do. You can't tell me that regardless of what is on the outside of us, we have to help each other to think better about each other, to think better about themselves. We got a lot of work to do, folks. So, my thoughts and prayers to Nipsey Hussle. I can only imagine to the father of Eric Holder Jr. You never want to produce a child that ends up being a killer. So as a father, I can only imagine. I mean, he's just trying to do his fatherly duty, trying to provide some defense for his son. But I could only imagine. There were so many lives that were shattered as a result of this situation. And guess what? If the community, as people in the community don't deal with it, it will continue to be the vicious cycle that we find ourselves at. All right, folks, I got to take another quick pause. When we come forward, let's talk about the brother that wore the dashiki in the Tennessee State House. I'm share with you what Brother Roland had to say, because he chatted with our own brother Roland Martin a couple of days ago, and I want to share with you a little bit about that and get your take. So stay with us. It's The Culture here on the Black Star Network.
Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch! I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig? When you talk about blackness and what happens in black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Check some money orders. Go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland@RolandSMartin.com.
Folks, welcome back to the show. I wanted to give you an update on that story that we shared with you about the young Tennessee lawmaker who made national headlines because he decided to take his his political activism to the next level, and he decided to wear a dashiki, an African garb, on the floor of the Tennessee State House. As he was trying to take care of the business of the people. Now, of course, as a result of that, Tennessee is a state that is controlled by Republicans, and they didn't like that. They didn't like that at all. So they decided to, they gave him warnings and told him he had to abide by the dress code. Now, we had a conversation about this situation, and some of you said, yes, he did what he should have done. He's a young black man. He's tired of the political BS, and he wants to affirm his blackness and put them on notice. But then others of you said, well, there is a dress code. You can express yourself and talk about your blackness, all well and good. But if there is a set of rules and guidelines that have been outlined before you even came into the institution, then guess what? You should do your due diligence and follow the rules. Well, that brother had an opportunity to sit down with our very own Roland Martin on RMU. I wanted to bring you up to speed on what he had to say. Check it
out. My goodness. First of all, congratulations on your election. That's first.
Thank you so much, Roland. I appreciate it. And really grateful to serve in District 86 here in Memphis and Millington and Shelby County.
Well, Lord, now you got these white Republicans just losing their mind because, they ain't never seen a black man with an afro and dashiki. Oh, my goodness. What's going to be next? H-Rap Brown, berets, and long guns and leather coats?
I mean, what you know and what I know is it had very little to do with wearing the dashiki in and of itself. It's what it represents. And in a system of white supremacy, and one where control is what is most important, where the elevation of whiteness is what people want, you will be ridiculed for anything that is subversive to that status quo. And I think what happened when they saw our afro and our dashiki, which is honoring our ancestors and paying homage to the people who made this possible, is also for them a recognition of change. And when you're in this culture that really prides itself on being the same, really prides itself on being, as you know, it's white, supermajority, male, cisgendered folks. It's not a place of inclusivity. It's not a place of true representation where black folks' voices and queer folks' voices and people who are different voices are really elevated. Then we do something that upsets them by just our presence and our being. But that's really important for us to do. In this type of environment where they're taking away HIV funding, which we know disproportionately hurts black folks, trying to retain third graders in the state of Tennessee, which we know is going to disproportionately hurt black folks and poor folks, continuing to allow corporations to run over the poor and not raising the minimum wage, not providing housing. They want to talk about an attire and not do their jobs, which is really representing people to help Tennesseans be lifted out of poverty and be lifted to the point of some prosperity in a state that is getting a lot of money and resources, but is going to the people who are most wealthy here.
And then they even told you, if you don't like it, find you a new career. Excuse me?
Listen, it is exactly who they are. And for a lot of folks who I talk with and say things about, well, you can just wear a suit and tie and this wouldn't be an issue at all. I remind them, I've been wearing a suit and tie since I was 8 years old. I have no problem with wearing a suit and tie. That is not what is at issue. What is at issue is what the Republican Party of Tennessee says about who belongs. See, that is what is at issue. That's the conversation that we have to have, because what they are saying is you don't belong. And in their response, first they say, well, there are these rules. We learned there are no rules about attire. Permanent Rule 2 only talks about decorum, and the Speaker of the House is the one who sets decorum. And so if he would like for tomorrow to be pajama day, then tomorrow you can wear pajamas on the floor. There's no rule that has been voted on for people to wear suits and ties. But their second comment, which is, go find another job. We've heard this before. You don't belong here. Your voice, your opinion, your spirit, your presence, your color, your kind don't belong in this space and in this environment. It makes us afraid. It worries us. And it is that type of spirit that the person who said this intended. It is that type of spirit that navigates and is the rule-making body, as it were, for the Tennessee State House and the Tennessee State Senate. And so when it comes to issues of abortion and limiting people's access to health care, when it comes to whether or not folks can do drag shows, whether or not folks can get access to medicine, it is about control and making sure that the people who are already the most marginalized, the people who are already being disinvested, and the folks who are already being most oppressed never get from outside the margins. And when, through people-powered movements, through prayers of ancestors, when we break through from the margins and the periphery to the center, they get afraid. And there is reason to be afraid, because we are not going to perpetuate these systems of injustice and allow it to happen in silence. We're not going to accept the violence that happens through legislating and codifying injustice and inequity to happen without us pushing back. And so they are worried that people like us, people like me, people like District 86 are going to continue to stand up and speak up and show up in a way that pushes back against the status quo. And they are exactly right. That's what we're going to keep doing.
Questions. Julia Mavo, you're first.
First of all, my brother, thank you for representing. I really appreciate it. I also would note the cynicism of your speaker, who quotes Lois DeBerry, a dear friend, a departed former Tennessee legislator, to say she's the one who started these rules. That's nonsense. But what I want to ask you in terms of your representation is, what kind of support are you getting from other legislators? Are other Black legislators standing with you in this, as well as progressive whites?
Yeah, I really appreciate that question. And one of the things that I'll tell folks, we have to make sure that we are continuing to unify in the Democratic Party and for people who are progressive. One of the ways that you continue to sow division is to create separation. And I'm really fortunate there was a legislator shortly thereafter who said to me, he said, hey, actually next week I'm going to Ghana with my church and I'll be bringing you back some dashikis. And so there's definitely support that is happening and being had, and we have to think about how we turn that support into the work that we do and how we voice our opinions about the budget, how we continue to advocate for our communities, how we continue to do the work of justice. Because we know that, again, it isn't about the attire of a dashiki. It is about the representation that it brings into these environments and these spaces that have always seemingly been designed against us, that we have broken into and broken through to be.
Folks, that was freshman Tennessee lawmaker Justin Pearson talking about why he wore the dashiki. We're going to take a quick pause. When we come back, let's hear a little bit more from him and then get your thoughts. Stay with us. It's The Culture here on the Black Star Network.
I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show, Get Wealthy, focuses on the things that your financial advisor and bank isn't telling you, but you absolutely need to know. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch! I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
Folks, welcome back to the show. We have been listening to the conversation between freshman Tennessee lawmaker Justin Pearson and Roland Martin, who spoke to the brother about wearing a dashiki while he was being sworn into the Tennessee state legislature, and the backlash that the lawmaker received from his colleagues, particularly white Republican colleagues, as a result of that. But his colleagues had implored upon him that he needs to be wearing a suit and tie, as that is the attire and that is the dress code of the state legislature in Tennessee. But as you can hear, Justin Pearson is pushing back on that. Just want to play a couple of more minutes of this conversation, and then I would love to get your take on this. So let's get back to the conversation with Justin Pearson and Roland Martin. All right, we're gonna just we're gonna be pulling up that conversation in the back in a few moments. Let me hear from you, crew. What do you make of this? Is this something that now that you heard him yourself as to why he decided to do it? And I'm sure many of you knew why he decided to do it. We all kind of figured out why he decided to do it. Where do you stand on this? Let me get your thoughts on this. All right, let me go to Janae. You said, I went to work 2 times in a row last week with my headscarf on. It was so freeing. Just waiting for someone to say something. Not a bonnet. It was beautifully tied. Right. So Janae, did anyone ever say anything to you? Did they approach you about it? Anybody say anything, or did they give you something on the slide? And I don't know. Here's the other thing about your story, Janae. Are headscarves a little bit more acceptable than a dashiki? I don't know. So you tell me. Give me some more of that. Give me some more details about what happened with you there. But thank you for sharing, Vic. My guy, Vic Wicked. You said there are no rules. There are no rules for their attire. They are focused on the wrong thing. Just listen to this brother's intellect. I mean, yes, Vic. Yes, of course they are. They are focused on something the wrong thing. Now they're saying that there is a dress code, but we know also that traditionally when you are taking care of government business, that you do it in a certain dress code, whether it's like a polo or you have open collar, but it's traditionally the full business or business casual. But yeah, I mean, I agree with you. Like, they're focused on the wrong thing. Justin just said that as well. But are we surprised that they're focused on the wrong thing? Are we surprised that they are focused on identity politics and not actually taking care of the business of the people? I'm not surprised, Vic. I'm not surprised at all. Pauline, you said, I am so sick of these, got some curse words there, Pauline, trying to tell us what to wear, how to wear our hair, what to say. Anyway, he was elected to this position, so leave him alone. I really want to cuss. Oh, we know you do. But to your point, yes, if the people voted for this man, he should be left alone. But guess what? He still has to abide by some of these rules. Now, they may, if they don't have rules, if they didn't have rules before, Pauline, guess who's about to get them now? Yeah, that's all I'm gonna say. You can go ahead and cuss a little bit. This is one of those situations that warrants it. Willie, thank you, Pauline. Willie checked in. Willie, you said, look, they swear in whole liars in suits, says C. George Santos. What a person is wearing means nothing. The character of the person matters. This brother is strong. Folks, I get you. Willie, come on, bro. You know it like I know it, sir. They don't care about what you wear. They're not even thinking about your character. They just don't like the fact that you had the audacity to do it. And you standing on it. He ain't buckling. He ain't acquiescing. He ain't bowing down. His back ain't broke. His spine isn't limp. They don't care. Some folks don't care. We're trying to take a very moral stance on a situation that where morality or goodness or rightness should be considered, or fairness should be considered. None of that matters, bro. You know it. I know it. Everybody know it. It don't matter. It's just the fact that you had the balls to do it, and you're going to flaunt yourself in front of your face. And then when we tell you not to do it or stop doing it, you're going to tell us no. Man, thank you, Willie, for that. All right, let me go to Truth is Power. Truth is Power. You said anything that exudes black power, black pride, and black unity there against. That's why we keep our eyes on in Virginia and Arkansas. These governors are trying to go back to the 1610. Yeah, look, we're at that place right now where our blackness is under attack. Now, it's always been under attack, but now it is so much as a part of on the forefront of America's psyche, all the way up from the little man to the big man, quote unquote, right? From the smallest town to the White House, people are trying to figure out what to do with Black people in America. I'm saying that with the straightest of face. I'm saying that with the realest of real. I'm saying that folks are trying to figure out, what do you do with a group of people who are showing signs that they had enough? What do you do with 40 to 50 million people that is getting sick and tired of being sick and tired? What do you do? What do you do with groups of people who have the money, who have the resources at their disposal, right? Who have the agitators among their ranks, but they just need that one thing to bring it all together. That key guidance, that key knowledge, right? To really excite people. So what do you do with that? And I think that's part of the reason why we see how these police departments handle the situations with these police-involved shootings, and we can go on and on and on. But that was just bringing it up as an example. But what do you do? What do you do when you have a group of people who have been oppressed and are slowly waking up from their oppression? What do you do? Let me just get a couple of more minutes very quickly. Can we get a couple of minutes left, King Keenan, with Justin Pearson here? I just want to kind of share it and let folks hear what Mr. Pearson had to say. Take a look at this, folks.
On your work and your win, Representative Pearson. And the question I have for you is on a larger scale. In this country where so much of who we are is being attacked and people are removing us from the books and people who have to have the Crown Acts to protect hair, can you just share your overall thoughts about the importance in this moment now in showing up as your authentic Black self?
Well, thank you for that question. And listen, we Black and we beautiful. We got here not because people succumbed to all of the trauma and the challenges and the heartache and the pain of being Black. It's because they embraced the beauty and the vision and the opportunity that we have chosen to create in this place called the United States of America, despite everything that it has done to us and against us. We have made democracy possible here. We have made the vision that some white folks wrote on paper but did not believe more true. And we still have a lot of more work to do. And it is one recognizing that it isn't right that we have to have laws like the Crown Act that says you can't discriminate against someone because of the color of their hair. It isn't right for racist white governors to say we don't need to learn about Black history because that doesn't have value. It is not right for Black kids to be told that you can't learn about your history or critical race theory or things like this because white people and white children might learn that some of their ancestors enslaved African Americans, some of their ancestors propped up a system of injustice that we are feeling the vestiges of today. It is not right that we live in a country where over 4,000 people have been documented and lynched, and we have yet to have a day of mourning or a moment of recognition in our educational systems or in our society about those injustices. It is not right that we are forced to live under the oppression that we do. But what is really powerful in this moment, and what I think has been a catalyst since we learned and fully grasped the understanding about the lynchings of Breonna Taylor and the lynching of George Floyd and the lynching of Ahmaud Arbery and the true power of their lives and the legacy after 2020 about our responsibility as Black people in this society, which is to not accept the silences, is to continue to shout even after the cameras have faded. We can't breathe. Let's continue to realize that our fights are still here and now, and we have to elevate the voices of our community, particularly at a time and in a place where we are facing so many people who are against us. I am from Memphis, Tennessee, and we are dealing with the loss, the murder of Tyree Nichols, killed by multiple police officers who were Black and African American. Of course, there were white officers and county deputies and EMTs who refused to help him, and he died and was killed in January. But what we are realizing is there's a system of white supremacy that is permeating all facets of our lives. There's a system that is being designed against us. And we have a responsibility to recognize what is happening at large and to resist it, even for Black men in particular, when some of those systems might benefit us, when it comes to patriarchy in particular. And realizing that until we position our policies and our practices and our speech and our voice to elevate the person most marginalized, which in our communities are Black women, and say what is done unto Black women will be the litmus test for the progress of this country. And if we have not made sure that equal pay really does become a reality, if we have not made sure that childcare is a guarantee and universal basic income is elevated, if we don't do things that help the person who's most marginalized in the Black community, using our voice and our power and our privilege, then we as a country will never be who and what we possibly can be. But there is hope. And this is the reality that I am fortunate to live into each day.
Let me get myself off me. When Tennessee starts waking up, when the South starts waking up, when Black folks in the South, in Tennessee, in Alabama, Louisiana, when y'all start waking up like this, it's a wrap. When Black folks in Texas, when as y'all waking up, it's a wrap. It's a wrap. It's our brothers and sisters that have been down in that part of the country that have felt the brunt. You know, I'm from Maryland, so we still like on that Mason-Dixon line. You know what I mean? So we felt the brunt, but from Maryland all the way down, if when Black folks start waking up and start getting into that level of consciousness, it's a wrap. Y'all have felt the brunt. If you're from the South, you felt the South, right? You felt that knee on your neck. Right? You felt all of those economic sanctions. You felt hatred. You felt all of that. But once you start waking up, and that's why I'm listening to my brother, if he from Memphis and he got more people that not only is he just talking it, he actually was elected to office talking that talk. It's a wrap, folks. It is a wrap. I'm telling you, it is a wrap. Even in the Midwest, I know my man Keenan, like, you know, you're up in Chicago. Once you start getting those places that house our people, and they've been from that part of the country, they know firsthand what that racism, that hatred looks like. They dealt with it. Their families have dealt with it for generations, and they got all you need is one in the family that says, nope, not today, not today. We ain't going to do it. Ain't no more children under this. It's a wrap. That level of consciousness will uproot that white supremacy and knock its brains out, folks. So what we're seeing today is very, very powerful. And so big shout out to Justin Pearson for standing his ground and being who he is and being unapologetically Black. And if you're down in Tennessee, make sure y'all reach out to that brother, protect that brother, put some good energy out to that brother, because you know what? When you start talking that serious Blackness in those spaces, guess what, folks? It's not going to go over well with some people. So we do have to protect those who are speaking that truth to power in such a bold way, like Brother Justin Pearson. Look, we got to take a quick pause when we come forward. Let's talk about politics, because here on one side, you have a Tennessee rep like Justin Pearson, but then on the other side, down in Montgomery, we saw what happened with we're seeing what's playing out with this mayor at the month of Montgomery. We seeing now that the sister, there's another Black candidate, another Black elected official that's under some hot water because of how she's dealing with the people. Folks, the politics of distrust. I'm going to have a conversation about Black voters versus Black candidates. Man, oh man. So stay with us. We're going to have that conversation with political strategist Crystal Knight, and of course with you. So stay with me. It's The Culture here on the Black Star Network. Woo!
we talk about blackness and what happens in black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Check some money orders. Go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland@RolandSMartin.com. Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch! I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds.
As an angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol,
we're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear.
All right, folks, welcome back to the show. Here, The Culture on the Black Star Network. First, as we get into our next conversation with our very special guest, make sure you do your due diligence and support us here on Black Star Network. Your support makes all the difference in the world. You can support us financially. You can support us by sharing the content. You can support us by downloading the app for free on all of your devices. And, of course, make sure that you tell your family and friends to tune in, because we have 24-hour news coverage. I mean, we have a number of great things happening, and we're all streaming live right now on Amazon Fire Stick TV. So you could just tell Alexa, play your news from Black Star Network, and boom, right there on your Fire Stick TV, Black Star Network comes right up. So your support means all the difference in the world. So thank you so much for those who have already supported. All right, folks, I wanted to have a conversation about the politics of distrust. And this is where we're starting to see more and hear more and more stories of black voters and voters who are going against black elected officials. And for me, it's opening up it makes me wonder, as we are talking about some sort of quote unquote revolution in the political space, putting black people in these spaces and then having them to do things like this, it leaves a bad taste in my mouth. So I needed to kind of like have this conversation and process what we're seeing, especially in light of two particular stories. One is the story of the Montgomery, Alabama mayor who was caught on tape, the leaked audio of him pretty much disparaging black voter support, saying that he doesn't even need them. As long as you got white folks voting for you, I don't even need black folks. Well, Mr. Mayor, as being the first black mayor of a major city that was a huge, huge critical part of our civil rights movement, thanks. Then the second story is the story of the New Orleans mayor. This mayor, who is the first Black woman to hold the seat in the city, she is under fire, and there are thousands that have signed a petition to get her ousted as a result of a number of issues they have with her. And one in particular where some people say she is just disrespectful. She has some people have gone on as far as to say that she has when there was a Mardi Gras parade, she was throwing up the middle finger at one of the parade floats. Folks are not sure whether it was for a particular person or the theme of the float, but folks are saying you're not the woman that we thought you were, and we want you out. So let me just bring in political strategist Crystal Knight to give us some insight as to what we're seeing as we're looking at this politics of distrust. Crystal, thank you, Joan, for joining me this afternoon. How are you today?
I'm well. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely, sis. Let's talk about this because we have had the conversation time and time again that if Black folks get into political office, that we will start to see some change, that this is a way for us to kind of get our agenda across. But then you hear stories like what we see in our Montgomery and New Orleans and in other places that make people say, is this the right strategy for us to use to get the type of gains that we want to get? What's your take on that?
Well, I think what we're seeing right now, we're seeing Black voters really decide that they want a referendum on the people that they've put in office. I think if I can draw another parallel, we have to look at what's happening right now in Chicago with Mayor Lori Lightfoot. She's facing an uphill battle. And next Tuesday, this coming Tuesday, voters will ultimately decide do they want to keep Black leadership in office or do they want to go a different way? Now, I don't think that anything is wrong with accountability. If the mayor is flipping people off, if the mayor is, saying things in closed doors about Black voters in particular, or if the mayor is just not doing what the voters asked of him or her to do, then voters absolutely have a right to demand a new mayor or demand some level of accountability out of the person that's in the seat. A lot of times we go to the voting booths, we vote someone in, and then we really are disengaged with a leadership, elected leadership after the person becomes an elected official. But what we now know, or what we already know, is that, voters are paying attention. There are so many cameras out now, which is what we're seeing down in New Orleans with Mayor Cantrell. People are catching her on camera doing things and saying things that she probably is not in the best interest of a sitting mayor. It's not becoming of a sitting mayor. And the same thing with the mayor down in Montgomery. I mean, saying those things, even if the audio was spliced, it doesn't matter because it was still caught on audio. And now he has to be held accountable for it. And so one thing that we already know, Black voters don't want our vote taken advantage of. We don't want you to come to us only during election times and then come back to us only during election times without any tangible things that you've done to better our community.
So let me ask you this, Crystal. And this might sound like a Frankenstein story, but as Black people and wanting in our yearning to get some level of political representation, in our yearning to be in those political spaces, have we created this type of situation, these type of candidates culturally? And I'm not saying, of course, they come from different places, but I'm just saying that we have created the environment where we're like, look, just put somebody Black in, make sure that they talk about their Blackness, and then we should be good. We should be making progress. But is that something that the constituents, we as the constituents and community, could kind of take responsibility for?
No, I don't think so. I think, we have Black people in this country are underrepresented. And let me also say gender parity is also underrepresented when we think about how many men are in elected office versus how many women are in elected office. But if we look at the landscape of Black leadership, meaning leaders who are at the top of their game, either as governors, senators, I'm going to leave out Congress people, but mayors, particularly mayors and governors who have executive power, there is little. We don't have, a lot of Black mayors, particularly of major cities. But I'm sure there are many that are mayors of smaller towns with smaller budgets. But when we're talking about massive amounts of people. Chicago is the third largest city in this country. And so when you think about Karen Bass in LA, when you think about London Breed in San Francisco, Muriel Bowser right here in Washington, D.C., Eric Adams in New York, we can't afford to have LaToya and the gentleman down in Montgomery acting up, because it's not enough of us to even get comfortable where we can be out of order or be out of line. And if we have to understand, as a Black population in this country, we are scrutinized at a different level than white mayors, than Latino mayors, than Asian mayors. And so what works for some does not work for all. And so I don't think that it's right to say that we've created this culture where we just want to have somebody in the seat. We want to have someone in the seat that is representing the best interests for all of the residents, but also we want somebody that's representing the Black community at the highest level.
Absolutely. And, I'm from Baltimore. We got our Black mayor, Mayor Brandon Scott, as well. And now I'm out here in LA, Crystal, and it's like, again, there's hope that, Mayor Karen Bass will kind of make some type of gains and make the progress that we need for her to make. But it's something, because when you're talking about that level of accountability, there are still some folks who push back on that and say, well, we are the hardest on ourselves, and that we should give that person time. But I'm of the, and you can correct me on this one, Crystal, but I'm of the spirit is like, if you've been in America and alive for the past 10 to 15 years in America, and you get elected to political office, you can't say that you don't know how significant that situation is for you. That there's no way in the world that you can just be like, well, I didn't know. I mean, we unfortunately have had so many Black lawmakers who have gone down because of corruption and all types of madness. So that means that every time a lawmaker, a Black person, gets into the space, what do we need to do? Like a special class to say, okay, welcome to Public Service 101. Here you go. This is who came before you. These are the Black folks that messed up the situation. Like, what? There has to be some personal responsibility that these people have.
Yeah, I mean, listen, there are conferences that are designed right now to support Black elected officials. There's the Black Mayors Association, where all mayors, no matter what size your jurisdiction, they come together yearly to talk about leadership at the executive level, right? Leading in an executive position. There's the same thing exists for, state house members and state senators. So there are opportunities and ways for Black elected officials to cross-populate and share ideas. But like you said, in cities like particular, I want to highlight, like you say you're from Baltimore. Baltimore has seen a number of mayors, Black mayors,
I know, Crystal,
go down for corruption, but that doesn't mean that Black leadership still should not exist, right? I still believe in Black leadership, even amidst many of the challenges. And the other thing we have to realize is that just because we see some Black mayors having challenges in leadership, that's not anything that's new. Plenty and even more white leaders have just as many challenges, and sometimes similar. We also have to look at the circumstances. One of the things that I've been noticing about some of the complaints about Mayor Cantrell down in New Orleans is that, people are complaining about crime when crime is at an all-time high. People are complaining about her demeanor, which is something that she absolutely can fix. But we have to understand, jobs, the economy, some of these things are situational. Some of these things are economic that the mayor himself or herself did not personally cause. But the question is, what is the mayor doing to alleviate the pain that the residents in their respective cities are feeling so that they are uplifting their cities as they continue throughout their tenure as mayor?
That is the great question. Now, how do we make sure, because in the midst of this conversation about Black leadership, Crystal, it's not like it's an isolated conversation. This is happening, and it affects Black people, it affects white people, it affects Latinos and Asians and all of those folks and all these constituents. So now, taking a look at how this, for example, you talk about Mayor Cantrell in New Orleans. how do white people, how do we have a conversation with white people? Because unfortunately, we know that when Black leadership gets into power and then they squander the opportunity, white people will say, well, see, that's what happens when you put Black folks in. And it's not explicit. They don't explicitly come out and say that. But they, you know, in the conversation, in the debates or the forums, and when you're talking about things like, yeah, the previous mayor was a little bit successful, but this mayor isn't. Those stark contrasts will be emphasized. So how do we have this conversation in a way that maybe white people won't use it to leverage their power?
Well, listen, I think that when you run for mayor, when you run for elected office, at many of these things, you are coming in representing yourself, right? And so hopefully, I don't want to speak for any of these mayors, but hopefully they all identify as Black, and they identify as Black first, and then some of their other intersections later. But even if they do or they don't, we as a community cannot allow white people to tell us how to govern or what is best, even throughout our successes and failures. Because what we know, every single elected official has their flaws. And so if we're always guided by, see, we told you we couldn't put them in office, that narrative, we'll never have any Black elected officials, quite frankly. And so I don't subscribe to just because a mayor has not done or fulfilled all of his or her promises or lived up to their potential, that they are still not fit to be in office based upon the white narrative. Because we have to understand the white narrative is going to be the white narrative before they come in office and after they leave out of office. And so what mayors have to do, Black mayors have to do, they have to focus on being the best executive of their city that they can, and making good decisions that will impact the residents in their city in the most positive way moving forward, and remove all of the distractions, but also do yourself a favor and don't cause unnecessary harm by taking actions such as talking bad about your Black constituents or flipping your constituents off.
As a strategist, what would you say to Mayor Cantrell, to the mayor of Montgomery? As a strategist, what would you say to Mayor Lightfoot in Chicago? You kind of good.
Well, I think it's a little late for Lori Lightfoot. I mean, she's T-minus 5 or 6 days out from election day. So that's a little bit challenging. I think, she should put up ads on TV, which she's probably done, put out another mailer, reminding voters that she's had their back during a pandemic. I mean, we have to remember some of the complaints about Mayor Lightfoot are about things that have gone wrong over the last 4 years. Well, over the last 4 years, there was an unprecedented pandemic that any of us that are living in today's time, we have not seen this in our lifetime. And so all mayors who were, serving between 2020 and 2022, and even now, they likely had a rough tenure. And we can look at Keisha Lance Bottoms. She decided not to run for re-election because it was so hard. Also, coupled with the pandemic, we lived through the George Floyd era, where there were lots of uprisings in the summer of 2020. And so again, these are unprecedented things that have happened over the last couple of years that people really aren't, I don't think people have forgotten, but they haven't taken into consideration what leadership under fire like that looks like. And this is not an ad for Lori Lightfoot at all. But what I'm really trying to say is we have to look at the landscape of her tenure, what she's done, and has she been able to move the city forward, considering the conditions that the city has gone through over the last 4 years. If I were Mayor Cantrell down in New Orleans, I would, address some of the concerns that the public has. She's on the microphone doing Mardi Gras, using vulgar language. Again, these are things that are just not becoming of a mayor. We're not saying don't have fun or don't even do those things, but you have to pick your time and place when you are an elected official, and you have to understand that you're always on. somebody is always recording or looking at you or wanting to have proximity so they can catch you in a, gotcha moment. So I think she's able to survive this. It's not that big of a deal. I think if she can point to the crime statistics federally, she can try to address some of the things that are happening at the local level. Now, obviously, funding crime intervention programs, funding programs that help people gain access to equitable jobs in the city. Those are things she can look at to see if those are not implemented, how she can implement those moving forward, which would hopefully be curtails to violent crime. And then down in Montgomery, again, I think the mayor, which he's done, he should address it head on. And he needs to hold a meeting with Black leadership in the city to double down on his support about why Black leaders are important, double down on why, members of the various constituencies that make up the Black community, why they are key to his reelection, why they are key to his term, and really just try to rebuild his faith and trust within the Black community. Because again, one of the things he has not denied is that is his voice on the audio recordings. It may be taken out of context, but he has at least acknowledged that is his voice. It has been spliced, but he needs to take full accountability.
He definitely does. Crystal, if we can take just a few more minutes of your time, because we got to take a quick pause. When we come forward, we want to get some comments from our culture crew that's watching today. And I'm sure they got some questions, they got some thoughts. So we'd love to kind of have you a chance to speak to that as well. But folks, we got to take a quick pause. Thank you. Folks, we got to take a quick pause. When we come forward, let's hear what you got to say as we're talking to Crystal Knight, political strategist, and having a conversation about the politics of distrust, Black voters against Black candidates. What's your take? Stay with us. The conversation continues right here on The Culture, here on the Black Star Network.
Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch! I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig? When you talk about Blackness and what happens in Black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in Black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Checks and money orders go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is roland@rolandsmartin.com.
Folks, welcome back to The Culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii Muhammad. We've been talking to political strategist Crystal Knight as we've been having a conversation, I think a much more politically cultural conversation about the politics of distrust, as we're seeing a number of Black voters who are going against Black candidates and vice versa in major cities. We've been talking about the mayor of Montgomery, Alabama, Mayor Stephen Reed, who was caught on tape of saying some disparaging comments about not needing the Black vote. We talked about the Mayor Cantrell of New Orleans, Louisiana, where she has been challenged with a number of issues, and just her overall demeanor has not been one of a public servant. and so much more. We want you to join us in the conversation. Post your comments in the chat as we're streaming live on YouTube, Facebook, and of course on Black Star Network, and of course also on Amazon News. Crystal, I appreciate your time, so we want to jump right back into it. My sister Lana L said they asked Mayor Lightfoot about reparations in a debate, and she said, quote, residents got their reparations with Invest Southwest. Lana said, Invest Southwest ain't black, nor is it reparations. My sister Lana is all in she goes all in when it comes to that topic. But when you have, but it's again, and this kind of goes back to that question about, have we created this situation? Like when we bring these black folks into these positions of power and we want them to speak to very pointed cultural black topics like reparations and other issues, and they don't seem to deliver. They just don't deliver. What are we supposed to do with that, Crystal, as black voters?
Well, I think we have to understand the limitations of the seats and understand the timing around some of the questions that we're asking. Do I believe in reparations? Absolutely, 1,000%. And I believe that mayors can put together panels or, groups that can begin to address reparations. We know right now in California that there is a coalition that has begun to figure out how reparations are outlined in that state. We also know in the state of Illinois, not necessarily in Chicago, but I can't remember the name of the city that's right outside of Illinois, or right outside, or maybe it's in the Chicago suburbs. They have begun to roll out reparations at the city council level. So we know that Mayor Lightfoot can do it, and simply saying one project is reparations, that's not good enough. And it's actually a slap in the face to black voters to just say that. I would have rather her say, I am still working on that, or that's something I plan to address in my second term, rather than just pointing to a project that's arbitrary.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. Sharon Brooks, you checked in and said, look, I'm fine with the accountability piece, but please use that same energy on white officials. Many complain and don't vote when it's time or to expect black women to fix it. We don't have the same standards. And so, Crystal, do we as black voters, do we determine what the standards are? Or is this something that we just kind of go along to get along because it was already determined by the metric of whether a black candidate or black political candidate is successful? Who determines that, or who has the power to determine that?
Well, I think who has the power are the voters. We don't tap into
that power, what I'm thinking, right?
But you know what? The voters in New Orleans, they tapping into it. You know why? Because they have put together a recall effort. And so when you have the ability, when you understand laws in your respective state, you understand how to consolidate power and how to use power to push elected officials. We've seen that happen in California. They recalled Governor Newsom. Their recall effort wasn't successful, but they launched a credible recall effort against Governor Newsom. And that's what's about to happen down in New Orleans. Likely, let me say that, if the signatures are all valid, then Governor Bell Edwards would have to officially put a recall, referendum on the ballot for voters in New Orleans. And so those are just two examples of ways that voters can use power to call out elected officials and hold them accountable. I think the other thing that voters can continuously do, they can show up at the mayor's doorstep. They can show up at the mayor's city council meetings or hearings, or wherever the mayor is out doing his or her community, involvement or work. The mayor has public appearances. We understand that in every city. And so when voters show up over and over again demanding accountability, one, it embarrasses the mayor, but it also puts the mayor on notice that people are paying attention and that you cannot continue to walk around our city doing things or not doing things that you promise and thinking that voters will still have your back.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Janae checked in and said, look, can we connect the dots? We say our youth need jobs, but then when they get paid, it's not enough. Heck, we got tons of adults who are underpaid, overserved, but the uptick in crime isn't just about jobs.
That's true. I would agree with that. Crime is not just about jobs. There are a number of different things that need to be addressed to figure out what the crime problem is. What we also know, typically, I'm using that word very specifically. Typically, in cities that experience high levels of crime, it's the same offenders, repeat offenders who are committing, high percentages of the crime in these cities. So you have to address a number of things, right? So it's not just jobs, it's housing, it's mental health, it's programs that would, help a person lift themselves up economically. There are a number of different ways that, mayors have to be creative with federal dollars that, the federal government is giving out, and think about organizations that exist in their cities that can help address some of the crime. A mayor cannot do it alone. I say that all the time. Like, we cannot leave all the city's problems up to the mayor and the mayor alone. That is why you build community. That is why you have coalitions. That is why you have advisors who are working with you day in and day out to identify ways that you can work with your communities to uplift them from a number of different ills that plague them.
Absolutely, absolutely. The other part about this, Crystal, is building that political power that we often talk about from the civil rights era, from the Black Power era. We're going into a space right now where this is 2023. Our next presidential election is in 2024, and I've been asking on this show, are we truly prepared to make some different moves in order to have our voices heard, to get our agenda across? Are we really serious about what we've been seeing coming from the Biden administration and just in general? Like, how do we make sure that we put a dent? If it's just putting the candidates in these positions of power, okay, that may work. But we are at a point, and I'm sure you already know this, we are at a point in our sojourn, in our political history in this country, where we are still not gaining what we've been wanting to gain. I mean, we don't have the Voting Rights Act and HBCUs, and we can go down the list. So coming in 2024, what type of moves do we need to make in order to be seen and heard by this country?
Well, I think, if you're talking about the presidential level, I don't have the best answer. I'll be honest with you, because we have not done a good job building a bench, meaning we don't have a good base of candidates that we can call on and say, you are the future. So that's one. We have to address inter-party challenges with building potential candidates up. I think at the local and state level, we have to begin to use the power that we have at the voting ballot and vote some of these people out, or vote people in that we think will best represent our values and will best represent our agendas. But that's not what we do. We tend to fall in line behind a particular candidate or a cause, when really what we can do is use the power that we have, leverage it so that the candidates that best represent the issues that we care about and have a proven track record of actually doing something about it before they run for office, those are the people that we should be elevating. There's a saying that's always said, the people who are closest to the pain should be closest to the power. And so if you've been doing the work in your community, you deserve to be in office. You deserve to be at the table helping to craft and create policy that will help affect your community moving forward.
We had earlier in the show, of course, we showed the clip of Justin Pearson, the Tennessee lawmaker who wore the dashiki, and so many people felt really invigorated by his speech, his articulation of the issues. And some folks are saying this is where we need to put our political investment in brothers like him, sisters like him. But I'm wondering, from a realistic political space, is that possible for us to, like you said, identify persons like a Justin Pearson and put them into those spaces, into the State House, into the White House, and other things? Is that possible, given the fact that there is this ongoing attack against Blackness at this point in the political space? Absolutely.
I mean, if we look at the founding of this country, when has there not been an attack on Blackness? I think,
Come on, Chris. We ain't got enough time to talk about that.
We ain't got enough time for that. Listen, we ain't got enough time to talk about colonialism and Jim Crow And, you know, these new Jim Crow laws that continue to pop up, like CRT and book banning and book burning, and, you know, just Black literature in the education space. But what I will say, I also happen to be from Memphis. So I'm very attuned to what is happening in the city and what's happening in the state of Tennessee. And what I will say is this: the more authenticity Black leaders bring to state houses, city governments, federal government, the more we begin to normalize the dashikis. Because there was a time when dashikis were a norm. That wasn't so it wasn't such a big to-do to see somebody working in a business environment wearing those things. This Black pride movement, we've gotten away from it because we care about respectability politics. We care about what the white man is going to say about us or how we present ourselves. And so Justin has no shortage of articulation, of community, of ability to work in a cohesive working environment because of what he has on. I don't particularly care for Black suits and blue suits and ties, but yet white men and white women continue to do that. And because it's been normalized, we think that that's acceptable and it's okay. So we need to normalize dashikis. We need to normalize head wraps. We need to normalize people wearing whatever they want to wear, because your clothes has nothing to do with the way or your ability to legislate.
And it speaks volumes about where your heart really is, because it's hard to go against Blackness when you're in the garb of Blackness.
That's right.
My sister, Crystal Knight, political strategist. Crystal, it has been an absolute pleasure, and I thank you for your brilliance and insight to give us today. And certainly we would love to have you back on. So thank you for your time today, Crystal.
All right. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Folks, we got to take a quick pause. When we come forward, let's give you the latest updates around that R&B singer guy. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. We'll talk to you about that. Stay with us. It's The Culture here on the Black Star Network.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie. We'll laugh together, cry together, pull ourselves together, and cheer each other on. So join me for new shows each Tuesday on Black Star Network, A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch! I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
There we go. All right, folks. It's time for us to, as for our final conversation. This is something that's trending right now, which is the situation around Robert Kelly, aka R. Kelly, who has a big breaking development in his story continues to happen earlier today. He apparently was sentenced again. Yeah, folks. R. Kelly, the disgraced R&B singer, multi-platinum award-winning singer, was already serving 30 years for sex trafficking. He's now been sentenced to 20 years in a federal child porn case. Take a look. 20 years for child sex crimes. He will serve most of the sentence in federal prison at the same time as a 30 years term for racketeering and sex trafficking. Are we not surprised? Are we not surprised, folks? Now, of course, this is continuing based upon his already his very, very lewd behavior as it relates to the enticement of comes out of the conviction last year on charges of child pornography and enticement of a minor. His second such lengthy sentencing in the past year, folks. According to U.S. District Judge Harry D. Lionel Weber, he said in court today that 19 years of the 20-year prison sentence would be served concurrently or at the same time as his other sentence. 1 year would be served consecutively or after that sentence is complete. So, yeah, R. Kelly has been sentenced again, 20 years, but he will be serving that at the same time that he's serving the 30 years. Now, the part about this, y'all remember the case or the situation that really got people's attention about what was really going on with R. Kelly was that video from years ago. They named the young lady, her name is Jane, during the court, but she came out and made a statement and said, I have lost my dignity due to Robert Kelly. I have lost my dreams due to Robert Kelly. I have lost my teenage years due to Robert Kelly. This was the statement that was given by one of Kelly's victims that was identified as Jane. She wrote that R. Kelly was abusive and dominating and made her suicidal. She said, quote, I will forever be the girl that R. Kelly peed on. And that, of course, is referencing that infamous tape of R. Kelly and a minor. So it looks like he will be staying in prison. He's currently 56 right now. His lawyers were trying to see if they can get some level of leniency, basically saying that by the time he finishes prison, he's going to be in his 80s and will not be any threat or harm to anybody. So that's why they was pushing for the 20 years to be served concurrently. And guess what, guys? I don't care about his pain. I don't. I really don't. I really don't. I have no ifs, ands, or buts about it. You got what you deserve. You've been doing this for a very long time, Mr. R. Kelly. And as a result of that, one thing that I got from this situation was that justice never sleeps. Justice never sleeps. So I wanted to kind of give everyone an update about that, but justice never sleeps, folks. And I want to get your take on this very quickly as we close out the show. You know, what do you make of this whole situation? Does it put an end to this back and forth about whether R. Kelly is actually guilty? Because he's guilty. He's guilty. Can we still step in the name of love, knowing that this man has done this to Black girls in particular? Because he did. He did. So yeah, can we, Keena, let's pull some, see if we can pull a couple of crew comments from this. Tiana, you said what's crazy, he didn't stop the first time he got caught. He's getting what he deserves, right? Yeah, absolutely. Now, Lana, you said, Kels, I'm sorry, he was low down and no saint, but in no way should he be in jail for 20 years. No way. Okay, Lana. We just have to agree to disagree. That's all good. Willie, you said, I'll never understand how men that could have grown women in the world choose little girls / teenagers. He had a chance and blew it. He needed help. It wasn't like he just had an opportunity. The man needed help. I know that he was abused. He should have gotten, well, out of everything that he had access to, a therapist should have been on the top of his list. So it is what it is. And more importantly, I'm not having this conversation from his abuse. Let's have the conversation from the victim's pain. Now, some of us, well, the girl said, but little Black girls, man. It wasn't white girls he was doing this to. It wasn't white girls he was doing this to. He was doing this to little Black girls. So if we want to break the generational curse of sexual assault, sexual abuse, that's so prevalent in the Black community. We do have to come to grips with these moments when these major cases like this come up to say, you know what, when is enough going to be enough? Because again, this wasn't little white girls. If it was white girls that he was molesting, abusing, do you think he would have even seen the light of day to go to court? And he's been doing this for 30 years. So let's take a look and take a moment to recalibrate to see things from that vantage point. Let's take a look at that. Janae, you said agree, Willie, but when you mess with minors, you are trash. Good for him. So many get graces, chances, then go back due to greed. God don't like ugly. Bye, R&B singer guy. These were Black girls that he took, that he from the south side of Chicago to other places around this country. These were Black girls. He preyed upon Black girls, man. This ain't hearsay no more. This ain't, I don't know if he really did it. That's him in the tape. No, he did it. He did it. And I hope that as a community, and I hope in our culture, we can allow certain things to just to accept this and to say, look, this cannot keep happening. I mean, it's amazing to me that how many parties and gatherings I've been together since R. Kelly went to jail, still play the music. I don't even know. I can't understand it. Not knowing that behind the scenes, this level of abuse was happening. I can't reconcile that. I can't do it. I can't talk about it. So not to get into no rant, but he did it. He's paying the price for it. And guess what? May God be with the little girls that he abused to be able to get on with their lives. I'm not talking about him anymore. Let's look at the girls that he abused. And so to Jane and to all of the little sisters out there, may God be with you to be able to recover, because we know that sometimes these sisters never get their lives back. We know that they hurt forever. And most importantly, want to become suicidal at the hands of a man who should have gotten help, at the hands of a man who knew what he was doing, at the hands of a man who used his power to create pain. So that's the latest with R. Kelly. All right, folks, that's going to do it for me. I thank each and every one of you. I thank our very special guest, Crystal Knight. Let's go and let me tell you again, folks, I shouldn't have to say it, but I will say it because there are some new watchers here. Make sure y'all do your due diligence and support us here at blackstarnetwork.com. Go to our website today, support Black Star, support Black-owned digital media. And more importantly, do something for yourself. Let's continue to have a space and a platform where we could talk about cultural issues. We could talk about the things that are important to us, have these conversations in an unapologetic, unfiltered way. And you can only do that, especially when you're talking about what's going on in and out of Black America right here on Black Star Network. So go to blackstarnetwork.com, download the app for free. Follow us on all social media at Black Star Network on IG and Twitter. Follow and continue to support us. Share the content because we always got something that we're streaming live. And, of course, tell your family and friends we are streaming now on Amazon News. And if you have a Fire Stick TV, you can check us out on Amazon Live 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Just tell Alexa to play news from Black Star TV. All right. Also, follow me on social media. I look forward to connecting with y'all. I got a lot of things that are happening with me personally, so I would love to try to share with you. So let me know. Connect with me on Instagram, The Real Farajii. Connect with me on Twitter, Farajii. And let's continue to build this community. All right, folks, that's going to do it for me. I want to thank my team, King Keenan, Joel, my control room. And I certainly want to thank each and every one of you for tuning in and for continuing to make the culture the great, great space that it is to have these conversations. I'm truly, truly humbled and grateful for every one of you that tune in each and every day. Like clockwork, you are there, I'm here, so we're doing our due diligence. All right, so thank you so much for tuning in. Stay tuned. Up next is Roland Martin Unfiltered Thursday night. Y'all know how they do. So make sure y'all stay tuned for that. As always, never be afraid to challenge what's wrong. Stand for what's right while being yourself in the process. God willing, We're going to be out tomorrow, so we'll have a best of tomorrow. But make sure y'all still tune in because we got a lot of conversation that you may have missed. So on those best ofs, so make sure y'all tune in for that. But God willing, you'll reconnect with me live on Monday. So I hope you have a safe and productive weekend. Spend some time with your family. Enjoy the sunshine in those warm cities because I saw y'all talking about how warm it is in all those cities. Spend some time outside, and God willing, let's reconnect here on the culture right here on the Black Star Network. Talk to you soon. Peace.